sister told me I was stealing kids from parents who deserved them more because I adopted two and am now pregnant, but I stood up for myself, and now my mom kicked me out. I, 29, never imagined my family would fall apart over me trying to help kids in need. It all started 7 years ago, but I need to explain the whole situation so everyone understands what happened last week. When I was 22 and fresh out of college, I signed up at a local community center to mentor at-risk youth. I was paired with Zoe, an 8-year-old whose mom, Amanda, was struggling to find stable employment while dealing with some personal issues. Zoe was bright, but she was falling behind in school due to her unstable home life. We met twice a week for tutoring and activities. After 6 months of mentoring, Amanda called me late one night. She was desperate. Her landlord had evicted them, and she couldn't find affordable housing. Amanda asked if Zoe could stay with me for just a couple of weeks until she got back on her feet. I was living in a small 2-bedroom apartment and had the space, so I agreed. 2 weeks turned into a month, then 3 months. Amanda visited when she could, but finding a stable job and housing proved more difficult than she'd anticipated. The mentoring program coordinator suggested I become Zoe's official foster parent, to make the arrangement legal and accessible to support. I went through the training and home evaluations, and 6 months after Zoe moved in, I became her foster mom. Amanda continued working to stabilize her situation. We maintained a good relationship throughout this time. She visited Zoe regularly and called her almost every day. I never tried to replace Amanda. I made sure Zoe understood that her mom loved her and was working hard to bring her home. 5 years ago, when Zoe was 10 and I was 24, Amanda and I had a long talk. She'd found steady work, but her housing situation was still precarious, and she worried about pulling Zoe out of the school where she'd finally started thriving. Together, we decided it was best for Zoe if I became her legal guardian. This wasn't an easy decision for Amanda. I watched her sign the papers with tears streaming down her face. She did it because she believed it was best for her daughter. Life settled into a new normal. Zoe thrived in school, joined the debate team, and made friends. Amanda remained involved in her life, spending weekends with her when she could and calling regularly. I made sure they maintained their bond. Then, 2 years ago, Amanda reached out again. She'd given birth to a son, Ethan, but was struggling to care for him while working full-time. She asked if I would consider fostering him as well so the siblings could be together. After some consideration, I agreed and welcomed 2-year-old Ethan into my home. We moved into a 3-bedroom house with a yard, using money I had saved from my job as an accountant. Last year, I met Kevin, 31, through work. We dated for several months before things ended mutually when he received a job offer in another state. What I didn't know when we broke up was that I was pregnant. I'm now 25 weeks pregnant with my first biological child. My older sister, Megan, 35, has been trying to have a baby with her husband for 9 years with no success. They've gone through multiple rounds of fertility treatments, all ending in failure. Megan always talked about becoming a mom. It was her dream since we were little girls. When Zoe came to live with me, Megan was incredibly supportive. She brought over clothes and toys and sometimes took Zoe for weekend activities to give me a break. She was also welcoming when Ethan joined our family, but I noticed her visits becoming less frequent over time. She claimed to be busy with work, but I suspected the kids reminded her of what she couldn't have. 3 weeks ago, I called my family to share the news about my pregnancy. My parents were thrilled about their new grandchild. Megan's response was a chilly congratulations before changing the subject. After that call, Megan stopped responding to my texts and calls altogether. Last week, my mom invited the whole family over for Sunday dinner. I arranged for a friend to watch Zoe and Ethan and went alone. During the meal, my parents asked questions about the pregnancy, how I was feeling, if I'd thought about names, if the baby's room was ready. Each time the baby was mentioned, Megan would give me a cold look before glancing away. As we were finishing dessert, Megan asked why I'd fostered 2 kids if I could clearly have my own biological children. I explained everything I've been explaining to you all here, but she was still bitter about the whole situation. She said she felt like I was flaunting my family in front of her when she'd been trying to have kids for years. She said it wasn't fair that 2 kids fell into my lap when I wasn't even trying to be a mom, and now I was having a biological child without even worrying. The worst part was when she said it was cruel that I'd taken 2 kids from the foster system who could have gone to parents who deserved them more since they couldn't have kids of their own. I told her that while I understood and cared about her pain, my foster kids weren't unhappy living with me. They were children who needed a safe home, and their biological mom had specifically asked for my help. I told her I was sorry for her struggles but that her infertility wasn't my responsibility, and I wouldn't apologize for offering a home to kids in need. My mom, who hadn't said a word during the conversation, either to defend or attack me up until that point, asked me to leave. I gathered my things and left without another word. The next day, my mom called. She said I'd gone too far with Megan, that it was cruel to mention her infertility when it was such a sensitive subject for her. She said I owed her an apology for hurting her feelings. I thought the same, because I didn't mean to attack her, and I can recognize when I'm wrong. I texted Megan apologizing for what I said but not for fostering 2 kids. I said I respected and supported her journey and the pain she was going through, but that I wouldn't accept being blamed for her struggles or allow her to characterize my relationship with Zoe and Ethan as me taking kids away from more deserving parents. Megan never responded to my text. My mom called again to say I was making things worse by doubling down instead of offering a genuine apology. But that's what I did. I apologized for attacking her, but not for defending myself from her attacks. It was genuine because it seems to me that bringing up her infertility lowers me to her level, while she hasn't even offered an apology. Now, I'm sitting in my kitchen watching Zoe help Ethan build a block tower. Zoe keeps asking when we'll go visit Grandma and Grandpa again, and I don't know what to tell her because it doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon. I've always tried to do right by these kids, but now I'm wondering if my family will ever accept our unconventional journey to becoming a family. I'm almost sure that standing up for myself wasn't wrong, but I've extended an olive branch to my sister to fix this, and she's rejected it. Do you think it's my fault, or have I done enough? It's been 2 weeks since the dinner debacle, and things with my family are still the same, or even worse. Many said that what I did for those kids was right and that my sister is just jealous, that she doesn't deserve an apology. Many of you shared similar experiences with family members who saw fostering from a selfish perspective, so it's not just my sister. I also want to mention Amanda's situation, specifically having another child when she couldn't take care of one. I'm not going to judge her because I don't care. I agreed to care for the 2 siblings because I could and wanted to. But going back to my story with my sister, after sending that message to Megan and not getting a response, I discovered she'd blocked my number and removed me from all her social media accounts. 2 weeks ago, I had my 24-week anatomy scan, and my mom had agreed to come with me. 2 days before the appointment, she called to cancel. She explained that Megan was still too upset to even hear my name and that she didn't want to make things worse by supporting me at the scan. She suggested I reschedule the appointment for when things had calmed down. I didn't reschedule because it was important. Instead, I took Ethan with me to the appointment. The nurses at the clinic adored him, and he sat quietly looking at picture books while the technician performed the ultrasound. Watching him excitedly point at the screen when the baby moved made the absence of my mom and sister fade. After the appointment, my mom texted, asking how it went and if I'd learned the baby's sex. I saw the message but didn't respond. If she cared more about my sister than my appointment, then she didn't need to know any other information about what happened either. If she'd been interested, she could have come with me. 4 days ago, my dad called. He said my mom had told him about the ultrasound and that he wanted to know how I was doing. He listened as I explained everything that had happened since the dinner, asking questions occasionally, but mostly letting me talk. When I finished, he told me what he thought. And he thought Megan and my mom were wrong. He said providing a home for children who needed one was never something to apologize for. And while he understood Megan's pain, she had no right to make me feel guilty about my choices or my pregnancy. He then offered to stay with me after the baby was born, bringing his new wife, Susan, to help out. They live 3 hours away and suggested they could stay for the first 2 weeks after the birth to help with Zoe and Ethan while I recovered. This was especially meaningful because my mom had originally offered to take on this role, and with her canceling, It's not like I can rely on her. Yesterday, I received a text from Megan's husband, Tom. He said Megan had been heartbroken since our argument and had started seeing a therapist. He wasn't asking me to apologize. In fact, he admitted Megan's words at dinner were inappropriate. He simply wanted me to know Megan was getting help and that he hoped we could repair our relationship someday. I responded, thanking him for reaching out and saying I was glad Megan was getting support. I explained that while the door remained open for reconciliation, that would have to include respect for my children, all three of them, and acknowledging that Zoe and Ethan aren't consolation prizes for infertile couples, but kids who deserve safety and stability. After sending that message, I sat down with Zoe to explain what was happening with her aunt and grandmother and what would happen going forward. Zoe asked some questions about why her aunt was upset about the baby. I explained that sometimes, when people want something very badly and can't have it, seeing others get it easily can make them feel sad or angry. She nodded and said she understood because she felt that way when her friend got the exact sneakers she wanted for her birthday, but her mom, Amanda, couldn't afford them. The wisdom of a 14-year-old sometimes amazes me. This morning, I texted my dad, accepting his offer of postpartum help. Then I called Amanda to update her on the situation. She now visits Zoe and Ethan once a month and calls them twice a week. Recently, she got a promotion at her job and has been stable in her apartment for over a year. She expressed concern about the family conflict and offered her own support, suggesting she could take both kids for a weekend before the baby arrives to give me time to prepare. I'm still processing my feelings about my mom's actions. Her decision to prioritize Megan's well-being over accompanying me to a major milestone in my pregnancy is telling about where her priorities lie. For now, I've decided to limit contact with her, focusing on the people who have been there for me and my kids. As for the baby news, it's a boy. The ultrasound showed he's measuring on track, with all tests coming back normal. Zoe is ecstatic to have another brother. She's already selected a stuffed elephant, the first toy I gave her when she came to live with me, to give to him. Ethan doesn't quite understand what's happening, but he pats my belly and says, "Baby," with a smile. I haven't decided on a name for this little guy yet. With everything going on, that task keeps getting pushed down my priority list. I've got a few weeks to decide, so suggestions are welcome. Thank you, everyone. Before continuing, don't forget to subscribe. New stories every day. Update 2. It's been about 3 months since my last update, and the baby is now 3 weeks old. First, the birth. Alexander James, whom we're calling Alex, arrived 2 weeks early, weighing 7 pounds, 1 ounce. The labor was straightforward but tiring, 14 hours from start to finish. My dad and Susan arrived the day before labor started, almost as if they sensed the timing. They took charge of Zoe and Ethan while I was in the hospital, bringing them to visit once Alex and I were settled. Zoe's reaction to her new brother was everything I could have hoped for. She held him with careful hands. Ethan was more interested in the controls on the hospital bed than the baby, but he did pat Alex's face and declared him tiny, which I consider a win. Amanda also visited us in the hospital, bringing handmade blankets for the baby. She sat with me while Zoe showed off the baby and later told me how proud she was of the young woman Zoe is becoming. These moments of connection across our unconventional family ties mean the world to me. Now, the situation with my sister and mom. My mom texted when she heard I was in labor, asking which hospital I was at. I didn't respond until after Alex was born, sending only a brief message with his birth stats and a single photo. She replied, asking when she could visit. After discussing it with my dad, I told her I wasn't ready for visitors beyond those providing immediate support. This wasn't taken by my mother in the best way, because she wanted to meet her grandson. She said something like, "You can't punish me for having tried to protect your sister's health." A week after we arrived home from the hospital, a large package arrived addressed to Alex. Inside was an expensive crib and several sets of newborn clothes. The card was signed by Megan and Tom. I called Tom to thank them for the gifts. He sounded surprised to hear from me and said the crib had been Megan's idea. When I asked if she wanted to talk to me, he hesitated before saying she wasn't ready yet. I told him I appreciated the gesture and that the door remained open when she was ready to talk. 2 days later, my mom showed up unannounced at my house. I was alone with the baby. Zoe was at school, Ethan at his playgroup, and my dad and Susan had gone grocery shopping. She rang the doorbell repeatedly, waking Alex, who'd just fallen asleep after feeding. When I opened the door, she brushed past me and went straight to the living room where the crib was set up. She picked up Alex before I could stop her. I asked her to sit down and carefully explained that while I was glad she wanted to meet Alex, showing up unannounced wasn't acceptable. I told her that I needed her to respect my boundaries if she wanted to be a part of our lives, and I needed her to give Alex back to me. She responded that it was the only way to meet him, because I had refused to give her a chance to do it normally as his mother. When my dad and Susan returned, my mom's attitude immediately changed. She handed over the baby and acted as if her visit had been planned all along. My dad, seeing my face, asked my mom to leave. She left in tears. The next day, I received a long email from Megan. She said her therapist had suggested writing down her feelings but had advised against sending it. She decided to send it anyway. The email alternated between apologies and accusations. She said her words at dinner had been hurtful, but also reiterated that my ease in creating a family felt like a personal attack on her struggles. The final paragraph revealed that she and Tom had been approved as foster parents and were expecting their first placement the following month. She wrote that her therapist had helped her see that her anger toward me was misdirected and that working within the foster system might help her heal. She finished by saying she wasn't ready to see me or the baby yet but hoped we could rebuild our relationship someday. I replied, congratulating her on the foster parent approval and wishing her the best with their first placement. I shared some insights from my early days as a foster mom that might help her and told her I was open to talking when she felt ready. I haven't heard back. My dad and Susan are staying for 3 weeks instead of the original 2. Their help is invaluable. They keep the house in order, ensure Zoe and Ethan maintain their routines, and give me precious moments of rest. When they leave, I'll feel prepared to manage things on my own. Amanda has increased her visits, coming twice a month now. She offered to take Zoe and Ethan for a full week in the summer to give me some solo time with the baby. Zoe is thrilled with this plan, especially since Amanda recently moved to an apartment complex with a pool. As for me, I'm adjusting to life with 3 kids. Middle-of-the-night feedings are still exhausting, but watching Zoe read to her brothers while they listen intently makes the fatigue worthwhile. And Ethan has appointed himself mommy's helper, and solemnly brings me diapers, whether I need them or not. The situation with my mom and sister remains unresolved, but I've found peace focusing on the family we've built here in this house. The road to motherhood wasn't what I expected, but looking at my 3 children, I wouldn't change a thing. Update 3. It's been roughly 6 months since my last update, and Alex is now almost 7 months old, a chubby, cheerful baby who recently started crawling and getting into everything. Life with 3 kids keeps me busy, but we've found rhythms that work for our household. The biggest news is that Megan and I have cautiously begun to rebuild our relationship. 3 months ago, she texted, asking if we could meet for coffee, just the 2 of us. I arranged for Amanda to watch the kids. She's become my most reliable support person. I met Megan at a coffee shop halfway between our houses. The first 10 minutes were awkward, with conversation limited to the weather and her new haircut. Then, she pulled out her phone and showed me a picture of a 5-year-old boy named Marcus, her first foster placement. Megan's face completely changed as she talked about Marcus. She described his love of animals, his struggles with reading, and his nightly routine of checking under his bed for monsters. She also talked about the challenges, his nightmares, his initial distrust, the meetings with social workers and the biological family. Then, she said something that showed how much she'd grown. I didn't understand before. I thought being a foster mom was going to fill a void in my life. But it's not about me at all. It's about giving Marcus what he needs until his mom can provide that for him herself. She continued, explaining that Marcus's mom was working hard on her sobriety and job stability with the goal of reunification within the year. Megan's voice cracked as she admitted she'd miss Marcus terribly when he went home but believed supporting that reunification was the right thing to do. Then came her apology. She said she'd been wrong to suggest I'd stolen children from more deserving parents or that my fostering somehow impacted her pain. She acknowledged her infertility had consumed her to the point where she couldn't see past her own suffering. Fostering Marcus had opened her eyes to the reality that kids in the system aren't there to solve adults' problems. They're there because they need safe, temporary homes while their families heal. We spent the next hour sharing experiences. For the first time in years, we connected as sisters, not adversaries. Before we parted, Megan asked if she could meet Alex and reconnect with Zoe and Ethan. We arranged a playdate at the park for the following weekend, including Marcus. The kids hit it off instantly. Ethan was fascinated by meeting Marcus, while Zoe appointed herself tour guide for the two younger boys. Megan held Alex, marveling at how much he'd grown since the single newborn photo she'd seen. Since then, we've had monthly family gatherings. The relationship continues to heal. There are moments of tension when old wounds resurface, but we keep moving forward. My relationship with my mom has been more complicated to repair. Amanda remains a constant presence in our lives. She recently started dating someone new and brought him over to our house for dinner last month. Watching her introduce him to Zoe and Ethan was a powerful moment. Zoe turned 16 last week. As we were setting up for her birthday dinner, she asked if we could talk privately. She said that, after much thought, she wanted to make our family connection official through adoption. We've talked about this over the years, always with the understanding that it would be her choice when and if she was ready. Hearing her say she was ready brought me to tears. We'll begin the legal process next month. Ethan, now 4, continues to adore his older sister and has appointed himself Alex's personal entertainer. Alex laughs more with Ethan than anyone else. Megan and Tom are preparing to welcome their second foster child, a newborn whose mother needs time to complete a treatment program. Megan called me for advice on setting up a nursery, and we spent hours talking about the practical and emotional aspects of fostering a baby. Marcus continues to thrive in their care, with reunification now planned for next spring. When I signed up to be a mentor, I never imagined I'd become a mom 3 times over, go through a seemingly irreparable family rift, and then finally find reconciliation. There are still things to work out with my mom, but everything else seems to be falling into place. Edit. Some wanted to know about Alex's father. He has moved for work, as I mentioned before, but he is part of Alex's life. He visits him every now and then and has also committed to child support. When Alex is older, we'll talk about him spending more time with his father and stuff. Update 4. After years of being a full-time mom of 3, reinforcements have arrived. I'm going to tell you what my life has been like during this time. My relationship with Megan has improved immensely, to the point where she's agreed to watch my kids to give me a full weekend to myself. She and the 2 foster kids who were at her house at the time had a great weekend, according to Alex. Even Zoe, who is somewhat older, was happy to spend time with her siblings and cousins, as she calls them. Megan and Tom have already started the formal adoption process for a girl whose parents are having a lot of trouble taking care of her. Amanda is still an important part of Ethan and Zoe's lives. They don't mind having 2 moms, and neither do I. I know it's not the most common arrangement in the world, but it works for all of us, and that's all that matters. Zoe recently went off to college, thanks to the scholarships she got after a lot of effort, Both Amanda and I are very proud. While Ethan and Alex are old enough to play together, and that's what they do all day. As long as Ethan doesn't have too much homework. But I've always talked about my kids, and little about my personal relationships. Well, recently someone moved in with me, and that someone is Alex's father. After a while, he came back to live here, and he started spending more and more time with Alex, although also with me. We reconnected and started dating again. And now we've taken the step of moving in together. We've been living together for 2 months now, but we haven't wasted any time, and we've invited Megan and Tom to barbecues, or they've invited us to their house. When that happens, you can't find a quiet corner in the house, but we love it that way. Now, my mother. My mother is cut off from our lives after an incident at Megan's house. She was watching Ethan and Alex while I had a mother-daughter day with Zoe. She showed up there, clearly understanding but not applying my rule of staying away from us. My mother wanted to see Megan's kids, with whom she did have a good relationship until that point, and also mine. But she didn't take no for an answer after Megan told her she could see hers when mine weren't around. I don't want to go on, but our mother got Megan so angry that she forbade her from seeing hers as well. It's just that she wanted to get so close to Alex that she ended up hitting and pushing Ethan in the process. It was an accident, but an accident caused by her negligence. So yeah, she's cut off from our lives, not just mine. The one who isn't cut off, especially from the barbecues, is my father. He may not always be able to make the 3-hour trip here, but when you mention there will be a barbecue, I'd make sure I hear him knocking on the door while we're still on the phone. I'd be offended if he only came for the barbecues if I didn't know he makes that trip, at his age, for his grandkids. He has even traveled through snow when one of the kids was sick, which brings a tear to my eye every time I think about it. And that's our life, between kid problems, barbecues, and grandparents. We just need a dog in the equation, but that would just mean more worries about them not eating all the barbecue ribs because my father wouldn't be the only one interested.